Good morning. Welcome to the OK Grognard Show. Today is Tuesday, May 5th, 2020, 9:30 a.m. Central in beautiful Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. Today's Tuesday. We have moved cartography and world building over to Tuesday from Monday with the new schedule. And today we'll be doing some world building discussion, and it'll be about the campaign I'm currently running, a first edition campaign that we're using Roll20 to run. And the setting, ostensibly, is in and around a village of Laidlaw, which I have shown on the title card there. That is a map originally by Dyson Logos, although I have modified it quite a bit to make it fit some characteristics of it were not quite what I wanted for a campaign I ran using this map. Well, I want to say 3-4 years ago, and the logo in the upper left says DL16, so that's certainly possible that it was as long ago as that. Always recycle. In all ways you can. As a game master, be sure to reuse elements that you have used in the past if they are handy to use. When I transferred this game, this first edition AD&D game, from a face-to-face game to online, because of, what's happening in the world with the coronavirus and all, I decided I didn't want to just plunge all of my players, most of whom had only passing familiarity with virtual tabletops, and likewise myself. I didn't want them to be overly concerned with the characters that they'd built up for over a year being at jeopardy because of my inexperience or their inexperience with the new format that we were trying out. So they were all 6th, 7th, I think one was 8th level characters, 8 of them at the time that we finished up, just a couple weeks before GaryCon was meant to be scheduled. We had done that with the intent of getting back to it sometime after GaryCon and just picking up where we left off with those characters, but in a kind of a new, with new eyes toward a new quest, a new loftier goal than they had had before. They had several ideas, several ways they could have gone, and they had chosen, they had intended to go in one particular direction, and I'd been prepping a bit for that. But with everything that happened, we opted to switch over to an online campaign, or at least I suggested we pick up and do a virtual tabletop campaign. To that end, I reacquainted myself with Roll20. I'd only barely scratched the surface back in 2012, I think, when I first signed up for it. I know it'd been around for, I think, a couple of years at that point already. And I started looking at it and thinking, this is a way to go. I did a bit of research, but honestly, most of my research was, what are most people using? And most people were, and still are, using Roll20. Most people that were using Roll20 were also using a Discord voice chat. Since that time, Discord's upped their game and brought back online a video component, which I guess they'd had in the past, but they kind of excised because it wasn't working very well for them. And since that time, Roll20 has also stepped up their game and reworked their video and voice chat, and that's actually looking pretty good too. So we are probably going to be dropping the Discord element just to have one less element. If it's already built in and it works on Roll20, when we use Roll20, we should just use their native voice and video chat as necessary. So that's the intent anyway. Laidlaw I had used as part of a lower level campaign, the beginnings of a lower level campaign, third I think or so. So really, I'm mainly using the map and some of the key elements, although geared slightly differently, because when we moved this game online, we weren't going to use the 6th, 7th, 8th level characters. I suggested we use 3rd, just some pre-gens that I had, but I also had some 5th level 1st edition pre-gens. So I trotted those out and let them choose from those. In some cases, they chose characters that were much like they were going to be playing if they hadn't switched. In some cases, they took the opportunity to try something very different. And we added one new player, and although we attempted to migrate 5 of the 8 players from the face-to-face to the online game, only 3 of them have been mainly available and have been having some tech issues. One of the 5 is just out because flat out needs a system upgrade before they can play. The other is in the process of moving, which I can tell you must be a nightmare. Must be a nightmare at this time with everything that's going on in the world. So I'm not envious of their position, and I hope they stay safe. The other 3, great players all. One of them doesn't always have access to a system. Computer, headset, ability to just log into Roll20. Just all you really need. But they're on someone else's system, someone who's playing, and that person sometimes has access to an outside system at their significant other's place. So sometimes we have people on independent, sometimes we have to pair up. And that's, makes it a little difficult to play. It's certainly something you can work around. It would be easier, more ideal if everybody had their own rig, right? Anywho, we also added one new player, completely new to the game, and they've been working out so far, although sketchy headset, so working on that end. And right now it's tough, even picking up something through Amazon or at a local. I mean, how many places can you go? I know that Best Buy was doing curbside service, but what do they have left in stock? How are they resupplying? Walmart? Yeah, they got headsets. I don't know that they're all that great. I don't know how expensive they are, and I don't know how many they have left. So many people are using the internet to stay connected with other people that the availability of webcams, headsets, tablets, I'm sure also, though I'm not 100% sure, has gone down, and even as that availability has gone down, some companies have taken upon themselves to jack up the prices on what's left. So you're going to find that even as we're, as gamers, trying to move our games online, that the equipment to do that is not readily available. I just picked up an extra webcam, for instance, to get myself, make things a little easier. I had a really nice one. I have a really nice one. I don't use it as much as I should. There it is right there. It's a really nice Logitech one, 920. I've had it for a few years, and when I got it, I wish I'd have gotten another one right away, because I think I paid 50, 60 bucks, something like that at the time, maybe less. And they're going for, if you can find them, a couple of $100 more right now. I found something that's similar that I'm going to try to use for some things that I'm doing. I'll be testing that out in the next couple of days, because it's trying to set it up for the crafting Thursday show. I'm going to want multiple cameras for that, and I think I can get that done now. So we'll see. In any event, we don't need to look at my ugly mug, because I want to bring up a map. And the map I want to bring up is that Laidlaw map. I was showing this, I don't know, a week ago or so. I'd set this up as a tavern they were in, or could be in, over here on the right. I don't know why. I just chose that they had come from this direction. It would have been the first. It's also the biggest tavern they could stop in of the several small ale houses that are in Laidlaw. For a couple of years, there's been this sort of oppression, a neighboring kingdom, which is comprised mainly of warlords, each with their own men under a weak king. They raid across the border, and they've done their fair share of raiding Laidlaw, and they were getting to a point where they were becoming a permanent presence in Laidlaw, pretty much squeezing every bit of wealth they can without completely destroying the town, extorting money, forcing people to stay put and continue to work, but not thrive. And this was the situation when the party came in and first got to know the town. So they were checking it out, and they dealt with the immediate threat, which is to say they killed off or captured more of the former, about half of the force, and the other half have fled northwest back toward Pargon, whence they came. So now the decision is, what do we do? So I think part of what they're going to do is try to shore up the defenses in case some of them come back. I think part of what they're going to do, they had a choice. Do we go east? Do we just ignore anything else that's happening here and head toward civilization as we know it to the east? Because this is sort of a frontier town. There's one beacon of light to the west along the coast, which they could also go toward the west and go to Colwane's Coves. That's way down here. They're here. Not the perfect map, but it's useful enough just for an overview. They come from the heart of the kingdom, which all mainly takes place along the river, which flows out to the sea, where the capital, the city-state of Ronk, exists. The other party had been, the face-to-face game had been kind of set up lower right down in this area. So moving them to another whole area was an important part of this campaign, was to remove them from not just their comfort zone, but also so that these characters would provide an opportunity to do some fresh exploration without constantly thinking about what their higher level counterparts would have done or how it will affect their higher level counterparts when they get back to playing them at some point. So, totally separate campaign in a sense, all taking place in the same world, in the same portion of that world on this northern peninsula of a southern continent. So Laidlaw there, Pargon, across the border, warlords, one of which has been allowing his men, sending his men, that hasn't been determined yet, across into Laidlaw, creating problems. They also know that to the south, across a river, the river that is down at the bottom of these hills that is on the other map, across this river to the south, there is a couple of lumber camps actually that are one of the main resources of Laidlaw. They've obviously built this wonderful stockade Motte and Bailey settlement from the great lumber in the hills to the south across the river in the scree of the Yargarian mountains. Let's put it that way. So we've got miles to go before we hit the mountains, but there's plenty of hills here, and there's plenty of forested hills here. And the choice then is for the party to go east, back to civilization, west onto Colwayne's Coves, northwest, to follow up and seek out the Pargonians as they head back and make sure that they don't become a continued threat, or to go south across the river beyond the lumber camps, where they've heard that there is a swamp with a small island toward the center, or out into it, on which there are ruins of an ancient monastery. So they're familiar with a place to quote-unquote go adventuring should they want to leave this civilized, such as it is, area. And an informal poll came up with only one person having a preference, and they mentioned the monastery. So I've been prepping that up a bit. That's a good time. It was utilized in the past in another campaign. It was, at that point, it's kind of geared toward a lower level. So this is needed to be reworked. I'm going to keep the map that I have because it was perfectly serviceable. I may have to clean it up to make it useful for online play. We'll have to see. But again, this is World Building 101, right? Reuse something you have and recreate it, repurpose it, use it again, and in doing so, shave down your prep time considerably. For two reasons. One, just the work of creating a map, of thinking of a new location, starting from scratch, the blank page. All of that will slow you down and be extra work at a time when you really should be off to the races. What we do have when we repurpose something like that are a smattering of ideas that have already been incorporated. Those are also springboards toward additional new ideas. I mean, I think everybody has had the experience where they have had to come up with an idea for whatever, whether it's gaming or some other aspect of your life. You're asked to come up with a suggestion, an idea, whatever. And when you're working completely fresh, blank, from scratch, sometimes the brain freezes up. It's a bit daunting. It becomes this. It becomes a situation where come up with something from nothing is difficult. However, if somebody says, "Look, I'm looking for suggestions along the lines of," and they give some examples of things they've already thought of but discarded, or typical things that they will not be using because they've been overused or used elsewhere or used in the past. They don't wish to return to those ideas. But just by giving some examples, it is more conducive to coming up with new ideas. Because even if the new idea is completely different from any of the examples, somehow, that's how the brain works, somehow the new ideas come in, whether they're loosely connected, purposefully opposite, or if they are slightly different, but different enough with a new twist that they become a completely new idea for that situation. And it may well be that part of what is holding back the old idea is that it's just not quite right. It doesn't quite fit. There are enough elements to it that make it untenable in the situation for which the new idea needs to be generated. And in this particular case, the ruined monastery works perfectly well out on the little island in the swamp. And if you think you're familiar, yeah, this is an homage. This was an early dungeon that I created way back when. And the shorthand was, "Oh, you're going to the dungeon? Okay, it's outside of town," right? But in this case, what we had was no build-up, no concrete setting for it to be located, because it was in a different part of the world I was building back then, and I hadn't laid it out. The spur of a moment, I just plunked down a dungeon I'd been working on and said, "Okay, there's some stairs down from a ruins." "Oh, well, what are the ones?" "Oh, well," and I wanted all sorts of information, because as soon as you leave something open, they will be interested and they will ask questions. And if you're not familiar, in the first edition Dungeon Master's Guide, there is a sample dungeon. Monastery, cellars, and secret crypts. And This particular one was the springboard for the one I created. Now the one I created doesn't use any of the same materials from inside. This particular one. But page 96 of the Dungeon Master's Guide has a section called The First Dungeon Adventure. Assume that you've assembled a group of players that has created. Each has created a character, determined his or her race and profession, and spent some time carefully equipping these neophyte adventurers with everything that the limited funds available could purchase. Your participants are now eagerly awaiting instructions from you as to how to find the place they are to seek their fortunes in. You inform them that there is a rumor in the village that something strange and terrible lurks in the abandoned monastery not far from the place. In fact, one of the braver villages will serve as a guide if they wish to explore the ruins. This seemingly innocent guide might be nothing more than what he seems, or possibly an agent of some good or evil power, or a thief in disguise, or just about anything else. In this case, however, let it be a thief, for reasons you will discover soon. The party readily agrees, and so the adventure begins. You inform them that after about a 2-mile trek along a seldom used road, they come to the edge of a fen. A narrow causeway leads out to a low mound upon which stand the walls and buildings of the deserted monastery. One of the players inquires if the mound appears to be traveled, and you inform the party that only a very faint path is discernible, as if any traffic is light and infrequent. Somewhat reassured, another player asks if anything else is apparent. You describe the general bleakness of the bog, with little to relieve the view, save a few clumps of brush and tamak sprouting here and there, probably on bits of higher ground, and a fairly dense cluster of the same type of growth approximately a half-mile beyond the abandoned place. Thus the party has only one place to go along the causeway if they wish to adventure. The leading members of the group, whether appointed or self-elected, it makes no difference, orders that the party should proceed along the raised pathway to the monastery, and the real adventure begins. It gets into the so-called guide being a third-level thief, and this is a way of introducing conflict into a new group of players, or a new group of characters for an old group of players. Before you are 3 maps, a large-scale map which shows the village and surrounding territory, including the fen and the monastery, the secret entrance, exit from the place, the lairs of any monsters who happen to dwell in the area at hand, and also a small scale, 1 square equals 10 feet, might be in order, map of the ruined monastery, which shows building interiors, insets for upper levels, and a number key for descriptions and encounters. Lastly, you have a small scale map of the storage chambers and crypts beneath the upper works of the place. Refer to the section The Campaign, likewise keyed by numbers for descriptions. So, we've got this set up. And indeed, I totally lifted the idea of a bit of an island with a ruined monastery in a swamp and a causeway leading out to it. But that is where it ends. That is where it diverges. That is where that inspiration took me. And then from there, I moved on with my own creation. So the interesting thing I think we'll find with how this is going to go is that the players will have to determine what they are going to do in regard to getting in and out of Laidlaw, should they want to be able to come and go. If there's a return present from the Pargonian wolves, they'll have to decide if they want to just stay out across the river at the lumber camps. But of course the lumber camps are going to be dealing with any problems that are back in Laidlaw because they ship their felled timbers back to Laidlaw, and that's where they get their supplies. They're aware of the swamp further south of the lumber camps. They're aware of the causeway. They're aware of the ruined monastery, the folks at the lumber camp, and they can guide people toward them or just direct them, whatever the party's interested in. Either way, it's pretty easy to do, but they are not going to be involved in them. Over the many years that Laidlaw's been in existence, they've seen any number of people come and go from this area, and they've seen any number of people head over to the ruins only to disappear. So it's quite possible that what they're going to find is that all they can do is go and explore them on their own, make short forays in and out of them. It's dangerous. The swamp itself is dangerous. I'm going to have to ramp up that danger from the last time I ran it, because last time I ran it for groups that started off at first level, and much like in the DMG, and then over the course of exploring the area, most gained a levels, a couple gained 2. Thieves, of course, always moving up faster than anyone else. And I think clerics have a pretty good progression compared to fighters or magic users. The concern, of course, is that these are 5th level player characters in the hands of experienced players, experienced face-to-face gamers, and we have yet to play in a game where lighting was going to be an issue, the dynamic lighting that's inherent in Roll20. And if they do explore underneath the ruins, I'm going to have to be ready for that. So that is something that we'll be working on over the next week or two, trying to bring that up to speed. So I think that's all I can currently reveal about this without getting into spoiler territory, so should one of my players stumble across this. I can say that I'm also spending at least some time setting up to handle if they take a left turn, which is to say, I have an idea what's happening down in Colwayne's Coves already, what's happening east in Civilization. I have some inkling and a little bit fleshed out as to what might happen should they go to the northwest to deal with more of the Pargonian wolves to ensure that they're not coming back. So these are things that need to be set up and need to be ready to go should in session they decide to do that. Now, a lot of DMs might not be comfortable with this, and they might nudge the players back on track, whether surreptitiously or just to flat out say, hey, look, you want to go that direction, we can quit for the night, but I've got nothing prepared. And that's a little more difficult to do on the fly in virtual tabletop if you're used to having maps and all of that sort of thing. I mean, certainly if all you're doing is theater of the mind, people can go anywhere. The flip side of that, of course, is combats become more difficult for players to visualize, and they can't fully take advantage of their character in combat if things aren't clear about where characters are located, where enemies are located, size of the room, terrain, size of the space in which the combat is taking place, what sort of obstacles, all of those things. Those are things we gain from having tactical battle mats. Those are things I enjoy having. So I look forward to using those things whenever I get a chance. Certainly if they had, during that first session, gotten into a combat in this tavern, another Dice and Logos map, which I changed considerably. This upper right door used to be upper left. That window was there, and I closed off that space. I wanted fewer windows on the north wall. I believe these were both where they are. These doorways, I may have nudged to one of them. Maybe not enough. I think this one could have been further south. I moved the outhouses from outside what was the back over here to over here. I wanted there to be some space between the door and the outhouse. I also wanted this entrance. I wanted all of this to match up this building here closely enough. So even though the chimney's there and the fireplace is there, wait for the map to catch up, next to the door along that north wall. I wanted this to work as this map here, and it does well enough. So even though there are some furrows behind on the other map and not a couple of trees, it's alright. It's a different season. When was that map made? Who made it? Maybe they were an idiot. Could be. And I'm talking not about Tyson or myself. I'm talking about in-game. Because, as I've said before, and I'll say again, no map is all about meta. Maps always have to have some origin in-game. Some person, somewhere, made any map that your player characters have seen a version of. So, if you're always assigning the job of making a new map to somebody in-game, then you've given yourself anything that the players will use as a prop. Obviously, when it comes to technical maps of, say, the monastery, there may have been a map made, and that could be used as a prop, something the players discover in-game. But the map you're using to run the game that the players will never see for a quote-unquote dungeon, that doesn't have to have an in-game cartographer associated with it. But the map of the kingdom, the empire that they saw, that I showed you, the map of Laidlaw, that the players get to just flat out see, those are in-game maps. So those need to be assigned to cartographer to have actually created them in-game. It explains a few things. It explains potential flaws in them it also creates a situation whereby things that might be incorrect on the map are explained based on the fact that it's that cartographer. Now, that may be that a mistake was made. It may be that at the time that it was made, something wasn't there, or something that had been there was gone or changed in some way. It can also be that a cartographer has an interest in not including something on the map, or including something on the map that shouldn't be on the map, to obscure something else, to confuse, or to deceitfully disinform whoever might see the map later, whether that's a specific person or just anybody. It could be that there's a patron who's hired a cartographer to make a map and purposefully make that map incorrect. So there are all different sorts of ways you can go. I think the first episode of the 4th season of Elementary, which was a show I very much enjoyed for its intelligent writing. It was intriguing. And there was an episode where cartography figured in quite prominently to the episode. Map was stolen. Maybe it was 3rd season. I'm just taking a quick check here. Let's see. Well, maybe if we see if a few keywords. I believe it was season 3, episode 6. Okay. There we go. All sorts of reasons why a map was reconfigured. Title of the episode:
Terra pericolosa.
Terra pericolosa, which translates from Italian to dangerous land. So in this episode, there's a map that is made. There's a map that is stolen. And then, in the process of trying to figure out where that map has gone, it turns up, but it's not the same map. And it turns out that a number of maps have been made over the years to change information for various reasons. And they're not exactly the same reasons as are obvious early in the episode. It's if you like the show, you remember the episode probably. If you haven't watched the show, I do suggest it. That's good. I'll tell you, if you're a world builder, if you're a creator of games, a creator of adventures, or a setting in which adventures can take place based off of the movements, dictates, desires of the players and their characters, then having some background in mystery will serve you well. If you've read a lot, watched a lot, seen a lot, are familiar with a lot of mysteries, then when you're improving in the moment, when you're dealing with certain situations, elements will suggest themselves to use in game. And this is definitely a good thing when it comes to running games. But that's more of a DMing issue than a world building issue. So we won't get too far into that. We will say also, though, that maps, cartography, can always figure into a good adventure. So you should definitely spend some time on your maps and making sure that the maps are what you want them to be. And make sure they fit the setting, make sure they're understandable to the players, make sure the players have access to enough information to make use of the map or to make decisions in game because of information that comes from the maps. It's all good. Do as you will. Well, listen, we're approaching the 80-minute mark, 80-minute mark, 1 hour mark, 40-minute mark, 45, 50. What are we at? 47 on the recording. So we're going to wind this down. I want to take a few moments to thank everybody who popped into the chat. Give people a thanks for the raid, my friends. Clark Hart raided with a party of 4. So kind of you. I should let you know that we don't do the typical drawing that most people do. I do a weekly giveaway. Anybody who has followed the channel and spoken up in the chat during a live stream, which includes right now, is eligible for this giveaway. Right now I've got a set of charcoal RPG dice, 10 of them, because there's 4 6-siders, not just 3, and additionally an extra D20 is included. Let me see if I can find a picture of these that I can show. Okay, here we go. So we just did the week 5 drawing, and the set of, this will pop up on the screen in just a second. Here we go. The week 5 drawing, the set of Navy dice were chosen. We've been doing this. We were doing a 6-week run on this. So the pearlized 10-piece polyhedral dice set that is charcoal on the far left is the one that is up for grabs after this week. And that includes also a 20-sided. Furthermore, as soon as it is open again, because it was fenced off due to construction, the Gary Gygax Memorial Stone that is down by the Riviera Fountain, just 5-minute walk away from me here in Lake Geneva. I will be taking each set of these dice down there, putting them on the stone, and taking a picture of them, along with the name of whoever was the lucky giveaway recipient. And those dice will then be blessed. by Gary himself. It's kind of a tradition here in Lake Geneva that anytime you get new dice, or if you happen to be visiting town and have your old dice with you, you take them down to the Riviera, you take them down to the stone by the Riviera, and you make sure that you get a picture of the dice on the stone. Now, my old boss at Lake Geneva Games used to say that only works with new dice, but could be he was just trying to sell a few more sets. And I'm joking. He said it jokingly, I should say. Oh, that only works with new dice. Yeah, okay, buddy. He was a funny guy. Still is. Haven't seen him for a little bit, though. We still stay in contact while the store's closed. Till it reopens. I'm sitting on my ass doing stuff like this. And yeah, I will mail them anywhere in the United States, continental United States, probably for free, depending on, because I think they're light enough that they're just a first class. But if somebody from outside the United States wanted them and wanted to pay for the shipping, I'm happy to send them outside of the United States as well. But you gotta cover the shipping because it could be pretty exorbitant. I apologize for that. But I'm pitching in the dice. You pitching in the shipping. So Dungeon Tome, you say you're from Denmark. If you don't mind paying for the shipping for that, if you become the weekly winner, weekly giveaway recipient, then no, I'm not in Switzerland. I'm in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, which is in the northern Midwest of the United States. But yeah, follow the channel. You're already in the chat. You're already typing in there. And if you're the recipient, we'll look into what it costs. We'll look into the possibilities because maybe there's a way to send it to one place and have it sent on to another. That's less expensive than sending it direct. I don't know. It'll be something we can check out and try to figure out. The Geneva Pretender. Nah, that's the thing. Our lake is not called Lake Geneva. Our lake is called Geneva Lake. The town is called the town of Lake Geneva, the city of Lake Geneva, in fact, at this point, because it's grown large enough from its original settlement to become a actual city rather than a village or a town. So, yeah, we may be the pretender. I think there are many towns in the United States that utilize Native American words for their name, and certainly a ton in Wisconsin, which, by the way, and there are many, many names of locations in the United States that are based off of Western European names. Why, there's this interesting habit, and here's a world building thing. There's an interesting habit that if something is named after something in the old world, it seems to be purposefully mispronounced. So, for instance, Berlin, Germany. The Germans pronounce it Berlin? I believe so. Is New Berlin pronounced New Berlin? No, the people of New Berlin, which is most of the way toward Milwaukee from here in Lake Geneva, people in New Berlin pronounce it New Berlin. It's not Genoa City to the south of Lake Geneva. It's Genoa. We don't pronounce the town of Delavan as Delavan. It's Delavan. So there seems to be this interesting quirk of the United States to name our places after other places, but then purposefully pronounce them differently so as to set them apart. Birmingham, Alabama, that's a straight out pronunciation, I think, the same as the British town of Birmingham, huh? Birmingham, I suppose. It's stronger on the ham if you are in the UK and you're saying it. In any event, thank you all for jumping into the channel today. Thank you all for following, if you don't mind, and also for speaking up. I will keep track of who's been in, add them to the list, and after Saturday is passed, we do a show every day at 9:30 a.m. After Saturday has passed, then we will do the drawing, and next Monday, as part of the show, we'll announce who won that. We're going to keep doing these giveaways every week. I know the following week I've got a set of old school Renaissance patches. Don't put you in, red flag? Okay. No problem. Let's see. Let's go this way, and we'll bring up the final screens. Before we get to the top of the hour, we'll just go over the schedule real quick. You'll see that on Monday we do the weekly news and giveaway. All of these shows start at 9:30. You'll also see on Tuesday, photography and world building. Today we looked at the village of Laidlaw and how we were going to build out the world around it, and had some kind of rambling discussion in that regard. Wednesday, Grimwald discussion. That again is my setting of Grimwald. We'll take a different bend though. We won't be looking at it in a world building view tomorrow. We'll be discussing campaign. Discuss it as a campaign as much as anything else. On Thursday, something new for us. Trying to do a little crafting and painting. Friday is the Friday again, another new idea. We're going to look at building VTT, virtual tabletop adventures. So we're going to be talking about adventure building with an eye specifically for use with virtual tabletops. In the case that I'll be working with, it'll be Roll20 because that's what I'm using right now. I'm sure a lot of that information will translate to other things. Saturday we do a running review of a cartoon. This week, I think episode 7 of the Dungeons & Dragons animated series. Feel free to join in and sync up your own copy if you have one on DVD. Sunday we'll do a rules retrospective. Did one on initiative a couple of days ago. Some of that information on the recording did not come out, so I may revisit that subject this week. Or something else may strike me that comes up when I'm running games or playing in games this week that I'll want to discuss on Sunday. Thank you very much for everybody who joined in. I appreciate it. And don't forget that the OK Grognard Show happens every day at 9:30 a.m. Various subject matters across the whole week. And we will hope to see you again very soon. You take care of yourself. Stay safe out there. And take care of your loved ones too, eh? Bye-bye.